The Mailman. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, when Grandpa was a little boy, and we lived on the farm northwest of Maroa, Illinois, I walked down the lane to get the mail. The mailbox was at the end of our graveled lane, which was a quarter of a mile long. That is the same gravel lane made infamous by my being able to run barefooted on the gravel. I would frequently go for the mail, so that was not what makes this story unique. The return trip to the house on that particular day was the problem. In those days, we did not have a telephone to communicate, and therefore personal letters were much more common. We received a fair amount of mail, but it was not like mail today with all the advertising flyers added to the bulk. Much of the mail we received was for our father's business. He fitted and sold trusses to help ruptured people who had inguinal hernias. A truss is a device made to hold pressure on the herniated area of the body, usually in the inguinal or groin region. My father had ruptures on both sides that were unsuccessfully treated by surgeries. He had tried many trusses, but ultimately he was only helped by the Dobbs truss, which was made of metal pads covered with rubber. The front and back pads were connected by a steel spring with enough flexibility to allow freedom of motion. My father would receive truss orders through the mail. He would also receive correspondence from the Dobbs Truss Company in Birmingham, Alabama. There were some other business letters, and then personal letters, too. At the time of this story, I was about 9 years old. It was a beautiful day. In fact, it was an absolutely gorgeous midsummer day. After I had walked or perhaps had run to the mailbox, I decided to take a shortcut on the return trip to the house by walking through the soybean field. The beans were about 2 feet tall, full of leaf and beginning to put on pods. They were planted in 40-inch rows, that is 40 inches between the rows, running east and west, which was parallel to the lane. Soybeans at this stage of development tend to spread out and even fill most of the space between the rows with their stems and leaves. Taking my shortcut through the field, I had to walk somewhat obliquely across the rows of beans by following a row, then stepping over a row or two, and then repeating this procedure frequently as I angled toward the house. When I arrived at the kitchen door, which was the usual entrance, I suddenly realized that I may have lost some portion of the mail. I did not know how many letters I might have dropped, but there were possibly 3 or 4 lost in the field. I did not know who the letters were from or what they were about. My mother, my brother Tommy, and I went back through the field to try to retrace my steps to find the letters. My father was away. Usually, when walking through beans, you leave a path of bent soybean plants tilting to the side as you walk through the row. But that day we could not find a clear path, and as we looked, we created new paths. The wind blows wherever it wills, and that can bend and separate the plants, wiping away any evidence of the path taken. We spent a long time looking for the lost mail, but we never found any letters in the field. Can you imagine some of the possible outcomes? Though I may have lost no letters, I worried that I had. And if I had lost some, they may have been important. If a truss order or payment was never received, someone might think my father was dishonest or didn't care. We never knew what I had lost, or, in fact, if I had dropped any letters at all. I do not recall having any unhappy customers, but I did learn not to take shortcuts through the bean field with a load of mail. I was honest, and therefore I was not punished other than having to search through the bean field for a long time. When mistakes are made, being truthful is still the best policy. Learning responsibility will gain you the trust of your parents, friends, and co-workers.